hello, assalamu alaikum, good morning, khush aamdeed, ji ayanu, pakhair ragle, goeiemorgen, boona. And this is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is all that I know of. Unfortunately, again, Shahzad is absent today. This is Shiza Hashmi with your very own show, World This Morning. Hope you're having a great day. It is a beautiful morning outside. And sadly, for some technical reasons, of course, we're not going to share the top stories of the hour with you, but we are, in fact, very quickly going to head towards our show because it is very interesting. And I'll be honest when I say this, it is very close to my heart. Before that, I have a very small message for you guys, everyone who's watching. On my way to my office, I use the Islamabad highway coming here, and every day, I'll be honest, I get to witness at least 2 to 3 dead animals on the road who probably got into an accident because of your vehicle or whatever. Please be careful about that. First of all, avoid killing them, of course. But if in any case you do see a dead animal, report to the nearest CDA official, or at least do something about it. Remove them from the road at least. It's not fair to them as well because they're as much as living creatures as you are. That will be it for the message of the day. Well, I do hope you understand what I mean to say because it is very important and pivotal also for the environment, but for the animals, the people who are moving by the road as well. But today on our show, it is going to be very interesting because we are going to discuss a very marginalized segment of our society who are as important and equal parts of the society as we are. We have them on our show here as well as guests present. But I will say that this segment of the society is very important. Also, they're very socially responsible. These people are living naturally with disabilities as well, visual impairment especially. And one of these people actually educated me before the show because I will have to say, like a lot of other people, I was using the word blind, which is not the correct word for this. The correct word is using visually impaired, and these people are actually as equal as us, living with the same opportunities as in their lives as we are, but they are visually impaired. And thank you so much, Mr. Zulkarnain, I'll have to say, for educating me on this because I didn't know this before that.
Thank you.
So,
thank you for inviting us.
you're most welcome, and we will be moving on towards our show. On my right-hand side, our guest, we have Muhammad Omar Bhatti, who happens to be a student. He is a high achiever. Thank you so much for being on our show. How do you feel?
I feel great. Thank you for having me.
And next to Mr. Omar Bhatti, we have Mr. Hamid Rafiq Khatak, who happens to be a counselor as well as a motivational speaker. Thank you for being on our show, sir.
My pleasure.
And next we have Mr. Zulkarnain, who has been to our show before. He was also here for our election transmission, who is very, very great and a very loud speaker as well. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Now, when we talk about people living with visual impairment, in this segment, in this show, we are going to discuss how they can be motivated to become an equal part of the society, how they can contribute to the society to be, to make it a better living environment for themselves as well, for their families, for the people that they live in them. Other than that, we are going to talk about their success stories. But let's start with Mr. Zulkarnain, who happens to be the Chief Executive of Potohar Mental Health Association. Am I right? Also, you happen to be the first psychologist, the first visually impaired psychologist in the history of South Asia. That is brilliant. Is that true, though?
Yeah.
So why, you could be anything that you wanted to be, but why did you choose to be a psychologist?
Because I wanted to understand my own behavior and people's behavior, and this is the only field through which we can understand human beings and mental processes of human beings and human behaviors and scientific evidence. We can find scientific evidence. Psychology is the only science which gives you that understanding. That's why I art this behavior, and I wanted to help others. They have issues because I was quite sensitive about the people, why people got upset, why they are behaving in certain way, why they got aggressive, why they are loud in a sense ke, why they are throwing tantrum, why they got aggressive, and I want to understand those things.
You were very inquisitive of what was going on besides you in your environment. Okay. Okay, that's moving to Mr. Hamid Rafiq Khatak. You happen to be a motivational speaker. What is your forte in that?
You see, I've seen, generally it's a mindset, which I believe is the real disability. I've seen people having all the faculties intact and still because there is this very favorite maxim that of Henry Ford, if you think you can, if you think you can't, you're right. So it's more about attitude, and that's where I focus. Is how you think. Now here today we have in the studios these gentlemen. They are a living example of accomplished people.
Right.
So that they are role models in their own way. Right. So they have what they have done is they have not allowed their disability to become their inability.
Of course,
You
of
know,
course.
and they're fully functional people. They're leading a very happy life, good
Right,
life, you know.
right.
And so it's more about the mental attitude, you know, it's whether the glass is half empty or half full, you know.
Now, Mr. Hamid, I love how you've put this in such a beautiful way that disability is not an inability.
Absolutely
It actually
right.
totally depends on your mental attitude, how you want to take it
True,
forward.
true,
And
absolutely
since
right.
we're talking about accomplishments, I'm so proud to say that Yusuf Salim, who happens to be a judge at the age of 25, and he's actually taken oath as well.
Right.
He happens to be visually impaired, but he's going to places. How brilliant is that?
Yeah.
But coming back to Mr. Mr. Omar Bhatti over here, when I said you're a student, I didn't mean to say, give you a very little introduction, but the purpose was for you to introduce yourself. Now, you've been accepted into a university you're going to do your bachelor's as well.
Exactly, yes.
And you aspire to be an investment banker. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I am a student. Yes.
Okay.
I have completed my upper secondary education in Norway. I'm
Okay.
living there. I've been living there for 12 years.
Okay.
I am originally from Pakistan. I'm born in Islamabad.
Okay.
But because of my visual impairment, my disease, I've had to move so much, and throughout my life, I've had to motivate myself, and I found a cause, I found a goal in life, and for me, education, high education, and at a high level.
Yeah.
So I do aspire to be an investment banker, but it's only a step in the way. Just like my dream to go to Cambridge University is a step.
Okay.
So I made these mental steps for myself.
That's great. That's great. Just before the show, Mr. Hamid was talking to Omar Bhatti over here, and he asked him who is the person who played the pivotal role in making you what you are today. And his answer was brilliant. Let's just listen it from him. Who was this one person, who actually played this pivotal role in making you who you are?
In my life, it's been me.
Okay, you yourself. Wow, that's brilliant. But how?
You see, you can be inspired by many people, your parents, idols, many people. But for me, it's my own mind, it's my challenge with myself that motivates me. I can't be motivated by other people. It's impossible, because my goals, my dreams, they're massive in many regards, and for that, I can't sort of rely on anyone else. I mean, it sounds a bit negative, but
No, it's
truly
not negative. Of course not.
It's just that I trust myself.
More than anyone else.
Certainly, yes.
Okay, but that makes sense. But Mr. Hamid, I want to start with the family over here, because when you're born to a family, they are the people you're going to spend the most of your life with. They're the first encounters that you're ever going to have.
Absolutely.
So since you're a counselor as well, a lot of people come to you. Do a lot of families also come to you, to counsel their kids who are living with a natural disability? Do they? And do you think the counseling of family itself is imperative?
You just said it actually, because whenever family a family comes to me, and they somehow they expect me to be more focused on that child or on that young person, and probably trying to educate or enlighten him or her.
Yes.
But I end up doing otherwise, because it starts from the family.
Of course.
And if you have a supportive family who actually understands and accepts, most of the time I've seen, that the families are actually more traumatized than the person himself or herself, Somehow that they just can't grapple with the idea of, and they feel, that something has befallen them and then there's no way out. Now, this negativity actually affects more than any other thing. I've seen families, parents in particular, the sooner you understand that, yes, it's there, and you have to sort of, do something about it, rather than just moaning about it or, that why the skies have fallen, because that attitude doesn't help actually. And that somehow that I've seen gets trickled down, and the person, the child or the kid or the young person gets influenced more by that very traumatized family, because one way or the other, it gets translated into they telling the child or treating that particular child in a manner that he or she feels as if he really is incapacitated. And that, I believe, is the biggest obstacle. So the family's role, society's role at large, and then family's role in particular, has a very important role, where you are supportive, where you empathize, but you don't end up sympathizing.
Right.
You don't need to sympathize, you have to empathize. And that's, actually, and actually, it's something very interesting. I've seen that if there is this disability, there are other faculties, Allah has His own ways. There are other faculties that I've seen are more heightened actually, they benefit from the other faculties. And I've seen this all across. Something, we travel, there are people who can see, but they can't see.
Right, right, right.
I hope you understand.
Yes,
you know,
I know what you
they
mean.
can see, they have this vision.
A mental vision is something
you
else
know,
as
but
well.
they can't see because they're just not conscious
Right,
of you know, of driving. You know, how many people actually see the greenery around them? They're just not conscious about
exactly
it.
true.
You know, so it's within you. So the family has a very important role, you know,
Okay.
and they can either provide an enabling environment,
Okay.
or they can provide a disabling environment.
Okay. But Mr. Zulkarnain, I have to get to you, being a psychologist. Do you agree with whatever Mr. Hamid said, that in shaping what you are, your family actually plays a very big role?
Yes, I second him, but
Okay.
I want to add something more.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's family, because family expect their child, he or she performs certain role.
Yeah.
When a child born with disability,
Yes.
their expectation get hurt. They
Okay.
feel hurt. It's important for them to, you know, have catharsis of those feelings.
Okay.
And
Timely, soon as
yes,
possible.
they need time. That's very natural and human reaction.
Okay.
Because you know why? If they will not ventilate their feeling, they cannot help themselves, and they cannot provide positive support their child.
Okay.
Second area is very important, because if that, you know, trauma don't get resolved, then family ended up with, you know, started discrimination.
Right,
If they resolve those feelings, then they can provide positive support to that child, and they can help that child, and child can excel. That is very important. And second thing is acceptance of a child as like other child, because if a child have an impairment, that means he or she has different needs. He is an
Right.
equal human being like other child. This needs to be understood by the family, and they can understand if they speak about the issue, they discuss their feelings, and they solve their issues through discussing, through consulting counselor, therapist. That is important.
Well, Mr. Zulkarnain, I totally agree with you on whatever you said. But I feel like before you expect others, your family or the surroundings to, acknowledge what your rights are, you should be the first person, and you should be conscious of yourself about what your rights are, what the society or what the government has given the rights to you. Is it true? And are you aware of what rights you have?
Yes, I agree, because it's very important. One has to understand what his or her rights are, because it's very important. According to international treaties, Pakistan has signed CRPT in 2008. Government of Pakistan has ratified it, and
Okay.
it's really good. This general election 2018.
Yeah.
Major three parties promise in their manifesto. It's really excellent. They'll pass comprehensive legislation about person living with disabilities to safeguard their rights. That is really encouraging step, which means that we are going in a right direction.
Right.
Because it's important for individual, he should be aware of his rights, because if we are aware of our rights, then we can claim our rights. If we are not aware of those, then we cannot claim it.
Right.
So that's very important to have education, because through education is the only mean through which we can be realize our right. But
Right.
then if we can say we can narrate this, vision can be audible. Vision can be audible if we have vision.
Well, that's very
Okay,
well
but that
said.
makes sense. But Mr. Zulkarnain, we'll get back to this. Since you've said that, you should be well aware of what your rights are. You and Umar Bhatti over here are educated people. You're aware of what your rights are. But we cannot ignore the fact that there is a certain segment of the society who, needs to be educated. So when we come back from a short break, we're going to talk about what recommendations do they have on how we can include the other segments of the society on making them aware of what their rights are. Stay tuned to PTV World. We'll be back with World this morning. Good morning. Welcome back to World This Morning. We are having a great show. I am in conversation with some amazing, amazing guests at my studio, and hope you're having a great day as well with our show, of course, and with a very healthy breakfast in your hands. But before we went to a show, we were on a break, sorry, we were talking to Mr. Zulkarnain about how one person himself should be conscious about what their rights are. So I'm going to move on to Mr. Omar Bhatti over here. Mr. Omar, you, as we've established that you are an educated person, mashallah, and you do happen to know what your rights are as a person, okay?
Certainly, yes.
Since you are a person living with a disability, can I ask you that can you share one of your experiences with us where you actually got to practice, or actually got to take advantage of your rights?
Yes, of course. In my high school education, there comes a point where you have to decide what kind of subject you're taking. It's very normal, but for me, the fact was that my advisors, my teachers, even some of my doctors, they said that I would better off taking humanitarian subjects like history, sociology,
They
etc.
wanted you to study humanitarian subjects?
Yes, they said they recommended it would be easier for me.
Okay.
It would be easier for the school, but I knew that I had the right to choose what I was doing.
Yeah, of course.
Perfectly.
Yes.
And at that point, I exercised my right. I was young. I was 16 years old, but I knew what I wanted to do in the future. And my subjects were I was a sciencey type of guy. I had to do physics. I had to do maths.
Right.
And then I took those decisions. But I had a responsibility at that point to prove that it was possible, and I did so. And I succeeded, and I topped my college in both subjects. And therefore, I was convinced myself that taking your own decisions, making sure that you know what your rights are, and then actually exercising them, it can turn out well. But there is a certain degree of
Now, it makes perfect sense, Mr. Omar Bhatti. This is what we're talking about. This is the awareness that we're talking about. Omar Bhatti, at the age of 16, was well aware of the fact that he has the right to choose the subjects that he wants to study in the future. Although he claims that the school wanted him to study humanitarian subjects, but he felt like his expertise or his favorite subjects are science subjects. That is why he's going to pursue them in the future. We wish you very good luck for that.
Thank you.
But Mr. Hamid, in line with that, this is the mental attitude of Umar that has, led him to what he is today. So let's talk about that. How does that shape your life, actually?
You see, what I was, while listening to Umar, he said he topped those two subjects.
Okay, wow, brilliant.
So that in itself is an example, that he didn't allow that disability
stand in his
way, and so he's a high achiever.
Of course, he is. Yes.
And thereby, obviously, I think it's a trailblazing example right here, in the studio today with us, where he did not allow, because he was conscious,
right,
and I must say, and he was confident also. And I believe that there was a lot of motivation also, because he wanted to prove a point.
Okay.
Right? You see, and he wanted to prove a point, and he proved it.
He did, of course.
You see, so once you set your goals high, and then you're confident enough, and you have obviously the support that is needed, you end up achieving them.
Of course, of course.
You should never aim low. It's irrespective of whatever disabilities that one has.
It's not an inability.
Absolutely right. Because aiming low in itself is, I think, is the real disability as well as inability.
Right.
So here we have, I think, two very good examples, both in Umar and Zulkarnain. We in Zulkarnain, we have a person who is accomplished.
Right, of course, yes.
In Umar, we have a very young, energetic,
aspiring, yes, motivated,
inspiring example of a youth who is well on his way in achieving, who knows what down the year. Because I can see, I was talking to him a while ago, and he has some great ambitions.
Yes, of course.
And I am, for some reasons, having talked to him, I'm confident that he's going to get them, because he just knows his path. He's well on his way, and more importantly, he's aware, and he's also aware of his abilities, of what he can actually do. And I am sure that
he's not just thinking about the disability, but he's also weighing out his abilities.
His abilities, absolutely. And I'm sure he's gonna make it. I have no doubts about that.
Yes, of course. We all, no one has any doubt about Mr. Omar Bhatti over here. But Mr. Zulkarnain, moving on to you, do you think in Pakistan there are enough vocational and educational training facilities for people who are maybe visually impaired or who are living with any other disability?
I must say, first of all, I appreciate this fact of PTV that you people are using a politically correct word, and that is really encouraging. Because in Pakistan, if we look at, because we have some special education school in all over the country at town level, and one town has large area that is not sufficient
Right.
It's important we must have inclusive education system because everyone can have education under the one roof, because that through that we can achieve this goal, because person living with disabilities are 15% of the world population, which means 1 billion. If we translate in this figure into Pakistan, that means 30 million people who are having any kind of disability, major to minor. And for those people, it is important to have inclusive infrastructure. That is very important, first. Second thing is...
Now, what do you mean by when you say inclusive infrastructure? What does that mean?
If I'm saying inclusive infrastructure, there are two types of barriers. One, infrastructure which could be seen. For instance, if we install ramps, people living with physical impairment can, have access to the school. If we have JAWS, Braille system, job access with speech, or these advanced technological, systems, people living with visual impairment can have access to the information, access to the infrastructure. If we have signage installed, people living with hearing impairment can have access to the system. That means we could have accessible infrastructure. These are visible barrier which could be seen. There are other barriers, attitudinal barrier. People think myths related to disability. People living with disabilities cannot do this. For instance, Umar Bhatti, I'm quoting him. His teacher says you could do history, philosophy, sociology, but you cannot study. A good friend of mine, he is doing his PhD in physics from Canada.
Oh wow, that's great.
He's visually impaired.
Okay.
And when I was in class 9th, and after matriculation, I got admission in college. I said, I want to study psychology. My teacher said, no, you have to do face reading and this kind of stuff. What will you do after this studying psychology? I say, simply, what was my response? I say, sir, I want to study it for the sake of understanding first. And I answered them, this is my life. This is my life. Whatever I want to do it, this is my decision should be mine.
You're right.
And
you should have the right
you
over your
cannot
life.
dictate me at that time. And in this way, I art psychology, and when I did master, those teacher of mine, they said, we proud of you. And whatever you did with full dedication and your devotion. Now you are a brilliant student. I said, sir, those sentences encouraged me to do these things.
No, but that is the right approach that we're talking about. Mr. Zulkarnain is absolutely right, and we ourselves are so proud of you at what you are today. But since you have mentioned attitudinal barriers, they're a real thing, like for real. I have even seen people outcast people related to marginalized communities just because they're not comfortable being around them. So Umar Bhatti has visited different countries. He has interacted with different people, which is why I want to ask you, do you feel like there's a change in attitudes across different countries as compared to Pakistan?
Yes, certainly. When I was living in London, the change was, it was a very small change, I have to add. In England, I felt like they were looking at me as someone who had a handicap, obviously, but it was more evident. So it was more evident in England. I was very young when I left Pakistan, but even then I could feel the change. It was a bit more acceptable as in that way. But my doctor, who identified my disease, within a year, I think, he said that I should move to Norway. It is a welfare state, and the inclusion we're talking about, the social inclusion that people don't understand, is, in my opinion, even more important than the physical barriers. Sometimes
social inclusion.
If you feel at home someplace, it doesn't matter if it's a rundown building, and I've been to some really bad schools, but in Norway, because of the fact that it's socially acceptable, I'll go to the same school as other students who are perfectly normal, and that sort of motivated me. It gave me hope, for the world generally, and that's where I saw the most change. But also in time, even even living in North for 12 years now, I've seen change. It's become even more normal. It's become more understandable.
Okay, it's more accepted all across different segments of the society.
Yes, they feel more comfortable with people who have disabilities.
Okay, Mr. Hamid, coming back to you now, as we've discussed, attitudinal barriers, we've discussed how they face them. But let's talk about the science of attitudinal barriers. Why do people feel the need? Let's say you and me. If I go to probably a gathering or somewhere where people living with disabilities are present, why would I naturally be uncomfortable there?
You see, somehow this human psyche that we can relate to people that appear more like us.
Okay.
And then people where we feel, they do not have a certain faculty, we can't probably relate to them.
Yeah, okay.
That's more of a mental and attitudinal barrier, and then with the negative attitude, we may tend to even look down upon them.
Right,
That's where what Uma just mentioned. So obviously there is a lot of societal role and a social role, and then there is a more of a role that academics have to play.
Okay.
There's a lot of need for the awareness. We were just talking about rights. So the other side is the responsibility.
Right.
So if one person has certain rights, then the society, the family has certain responsibilities.
Yes, of course.
So the societies, like he just mentioned, this country, Norway, so what is happening, they have taken it upon themselves as their responsibility to accept the certain rights, and to treat them as very normal and as equal as they would consider anybody, and that is what makes a person with disability very comfortable, because he or she is accepted. It's that lack of acceptance that is actually, the real barrier, I would say.
So this is the mindset that we tackle.
It surely is the mindset, and I believe a lot of need for awareness. Educational institutions, society at large, media in particular. I congratulate you for this program.
Thank you so
because
much.
there's so many people, I'm sure, who are listening and who are watching this, and then looking at these two examples, and that is a part of it, where people become aware and they accept these people as very normal human beings.
Right.
And that, because I've seen that particular lack of responsibility or that attitudinal bias, if I might, that actually is something that we must work on.
Okay.
Because that is, and then what happens is that the society becomes conducive. The society actually moves towards supporting that very individual or individuals, in leading a very normal, balanced life, and we have examples in the world. We just need to probably follow them,
Right.
Even our own ethical values actually are the best ones.
Right.
Probably what has happened is that we have either forgotten about them or we are not practicing them.
Not pay much heed towards
Absolutely.
it. Right.
That is, so once we have the right attitude within the family as a unit and then as a society, I believe we are looking at, and again, a lot of awareness and media has to play a role in that. I would, and again, I think today you people have done a wonderful job by having this program.
Thank you so much. It's obviously our pleasure, absolutely our pleasure. But, coming back to Mr. Zulkarnain, he was here on our election transmission. And one of the things that he mentioned actually got to me. He said that one of the procedures for disabled persons, people living with disabilities, to cast their vote is, and, it's actually leading towards exclusion as well. Right, and today as well, he also mentioned that there are some exclusionary practices that people still have to face. I'm sorry if I'm not resonating with you on the same level, but can you please explain to what sort of exclusionary practices you're talking about?
Okay, first of all, it's a brilliant question, I must say, because people usually, people living with disabilities face different exclusionary practices.
Right.
For instance, when a child born, his or family is not comfortable with that child.
Okay.
They feel this child will not perform those gender roles, defined gender roles, which they have expected from a child.
Okay.
First, and on that point, they started if they don't proper process those feelings, they started discriminating their child. Second, when a child goes to school, school is not accessible. That means infrastructural barrier that stamp that exclusion, right?
Okay.
If a child, ordinary persons go to visit to have a national identity card, he'll get that his or her identity card.
No, let's take to this step by step. Let's do this one by one. When you're talking about exclusion, and you talked about school, this is about young people who are going to the school, that age group. So what is it that schools should do to, make them feel more inclusive?
School should provide that particular environment where everyone have access without being judged or without
discriminated.
Discriminated,
Okay.
right?
Right.
That exclusion could be infrastructural exclusion or attitudinal exclusion, right?
Right, right.
You were asking why people are not comfortable.
Yes.
The reason was because people were told that you have to perform certain role.
Right.
It's not people's responsibility. It's basically lack of education,
Okay.
poor curriculum, because our curriculum should address those things.
Right.
Because through curriculum you can build nation, and through curriculum you can destroy nation.
Okay.
Because if you have we are going on a right direction,
Yes.
we can build our nation within 10 to 15 years,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And if we are not going on a right direction, then we cannot build, because we back in 1975,
Yes.
people of Japan people living with disabilities started a right-based movement.
Okay.
It took 20 years. Now Japan is complete accessible country.
Okay. Wow.
Scandinavian countries, the people of those nations, they took step,
Okay.
and now they are inclusive countries. They have social inclusion, they have infrastructural inclusion. It's
Okay.
people's responsibility.
Right. So
Because
basically, we should be focusing on the curriculum to make it more inclusive.
Curriculum and producing, developing
Tolerance among the
role
society.
models. Media can play a vital role,
Okay.
because media is the only part of the society
Yeah.
who's shaping the attitude of the people.
True. Okay.
And if media started portraying positive role model, the people's attitude gets shaped
Yeah.
by the media's attitude. So through media, through these things, we can bring change. And this is a one step. We are sitting here, we are discussing things, we are opening it up.
Yes.
People get comfortable. People will have education, that people living with disabilities can contribute as a equal citizen, progressive citizen of the nation.
Right.
And these are not minor step, because PTV is the only channel in all over the country
Yeah.
who give due credit people to every topic.
Okay.
Well, and it's really encouraging that you people are calling us and discussing these things. You people are setting role model for other media groups.
Thank you, Mr. Zulkarnain. Obviously, we try. But since we're talking about the barriers, let's get back to this. You were mentioning that actually you helped a lot of people to get their national identity cards made. Yeah, please, can we talk about that?
Okay, to having special CNIC,
Yeah.
national identity card. For people living with disability, it's difficult for them to have that special CNIC.
Okay.
First, they have to go to the social welfare department, and they can have fill out the form.
Okay.
They could be fulfill their requirement, which means they could provide them form B. They could provide them their proof of residence.
Okay.
And then they can appear in front of the doctor, and he wrote to them that he is verified as a disabled, right?
Okay.
This individual is verified as a disabled.
Okay.
Then they appear in front of the board, and then board provide them certificate.
Okay.
It's a cumbersome process, lengthy process, but
Okay.
we pilot in district Rawalpindi. We basically squeeze this process in one day operation.
Okay.
Person living with disabilities, especially we provide more than 500 people living with disabilities, their disability certificate, their special CNIC.
Okay, okay.
And they came there, they give them forms. At that day, that day, they are asked to get their certificate from social welfare department, right?
Okay.
And then after having that certificate, because to have a national identity card, special CNIC, it's mandatory to have that certificate, right?
Okay.
After having that certificate, we call Nadra van, and Nadra van visit different places of district Rawalpindi, different towns, and they got their national identity cards.
Okay, okay, Mr. Zulkarnain, thank you so much for explaining the whole process to us. This was very informative. But before we have to wrap up our show, we're very short in time. I have a very quick question for Mr. Omar Bhatti. Mr. Omar, since this is a tech-savvy nation, everyone is actually into technology lately, and it's improving as well. There are different improvements in the technology in terms of the gadgets that we're using. Do you think it's also beneficial for you?
In fact,
do you indulge a lot in technology?
Not really. Honestly, before my high school education, I really never did. I was more of a physical type of person. I would play sports, etc., running. But since I've realized that the technology has been developing so fast that it's becoming more accessible for people like me.
Yeah, of course.
Throughout Braille, through voice synthesis, even mobile telephones, these smartphones. I was very afraid of actually buying one because I thought I would never be able to use one.
Yeah.
But when I got my smartphone, there was inbuilt software that was accessible for us.
Okay, that's brilliant.
And besides this is only on the sort of this is your personal devices. But in education, the only reason that I've been able to say at such a high level is because of the advancement in technology.
Okay.
I had to teach myself Braille in year 1 of college to be able to do maths, to be able to do physics. But the fact that technology was there, it wouldn't have been possible without it.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Now, since we're wrapping up the show, very quickly, Mr. Hamid, this is your camera. Go tell it to the people. Tell them how can they change their mindset and how can they actually motivate and support people like Mr. Omar Bhatti and Zulkarnain over here.
Thank you very much. My message generally to the society, to all the educated families in particular, is that they need to form these support groups, It's very important because a lot of support is needed. Academic institutions in particular need to play a role. And then together as a society we can come and support these people, because we have to fulfill our responsibility in giving them their due right, And let me also just sum it up by saying that we have to work within our circle of influence, That is how it starts. And then of course that would get expanded, and that inclusivity that we've been talking about, that would become a reality. That is, that's the way I would put it.
Okay, brilliantly put, Mr. Hamid.
Thank you.
But before, a very quick one-liner from Mr. Zulkarnain and Mr. Omar Bhatti as well for the people, who are living with disabilities. How can they, become what they aspire to be?
Let them follow their dreams.
Okay.
It's as easy as that.
Follow their dreams. Okay, great. Mr. Zulkarnain, from you?
First, accept yourself and start encouraging people and encourage yourself.
Okay. Perfect. Encourage yourself as well. Okay, this is brilliant. This was Mr. Zulkarnain, Omar Bhatti and Mr. Hamid with us on the show today. I have to say this was very informative for us. But if you have any questions or any feedback regarding this, write to us on our Facebook page, which is with the name of World This Morning. On Twitter, World This Morning without a G. On YouTube and Dailymotion, World This Morning. And the repeat is going to be at 11:05 in the night. Stay tuned to PTV World. And we had a great show. Good morning. Take care.